Hey, hello and welcome to our second GMRG webinar. Our webinar today will focus on supply chain challenges in the aftermath of the COVID-19 crisis, with a special focus today on India. Understanding COVID-19 related challenges in India will help to restart supply chains all over the world. So today we have a great panel, and our panel will discuss different COVID-19 related issues related to labor migrations, challenges related to restarting businesses post-lockdown, demand planning, adapting in dynamic environments, as well as cash flow planning. Before I hand over to our panel, my name is Robert Wittmer, Assistant Professor of Supply Chain Management at Arizona State University. And I have the privilege of welcoming you and everyone and providing some background information about GMRG before we transition to our industry experts. So what I want to do first is talk a little bit about GMRG, what GMRG is, share GMRG's vision statement, objectives, as well as activities. And then in a few minutes, I promise we will start our webinar soon. Okay, so GMRG, the Global Manufacturing Research Group, was founded in 1980 by Clay Weibarg at the University of North Carolina and Buho Ro in South Korea at Sogang University. Since then, the organization grew consistently. The vision remained the same. The vision was always and very clearly to foster collaboration between industry experts as well as researchers. Really the idea was to share ideas, concepts, and research findings related to operations and supply chain management. And you can see here on the screen in bold and italics, the main goal is and remains strengthen the linkage between research and practice. So now you may ask, how do we translate this vision into action? We do it in different ways. So first, the key objective is to study, understand, and improve manufacturing, supply chain. And that, of course, also includes managing disruptions such as COVID-19. Now, what are the key characteristics of GMRG? GMRG is a multinational community of researchers from all over the world. And it's really important to mention, since its foundation 40 years ago, this organization is run by volunteers from all over the world. Volunteers include academics, doctoral students, and of course also practitioners. Without practitioners, it would not be possible. Now, the organization has a very much a global focus with pretty much members all over the world who are contributing to the organization. Now, the application of state-of-the-art research methods is really key to create relevant knowledge, and of course important to also create knowledge that is relevant to practitioners. And that's the last point here: dissemination of results, sharing the results with practitioners and researchers is really key. And that's something we especially recently focus very much on. Okay, so what are some of the GMRG key activities? The key activity still is a global survey on manufacturing practices. And the survey is conducted approximately every 5 years. Currently, we are working on the 6th round of the GMRG survey, as well as organizing different smaller collaborative projects. Another initiative is the annual GMRG conference. And here we have seen the conference being hosted in different countries all over the world: Hungary, Australia, Canada, the US. This year we planned for China, then we planned for Brazil, and as so many other organizations, now we plan for Zoom, because that's where the conference will happen in September. Nevertheless, the organization remains active globally. Now, over 150 completed collaborative projects have we seen in the last 40 years. And of course, now recently webinars, and this is our second webinar, GMRG webinar. Okay, if you have any questions about GMRG or any ideas, feel free to send us an email to gmrggroup@gmail.com, as well as you can find further information on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is our platform where we communicate different events such as webinars. Okay, so now I would like to focus now on our webinar today. First of all, I would like to thank our organizing committee at Arizona State University. Would like to thank Professors Carl and Swati Rupani, and she was very helpful to basically coordinate the entire webinar and prepare the entire webinar. Piyush Shah, a recent ASU grad and now assistant professor, for inviting so many panelists. Wayne Wilbach for the technical support, and of course, a big thank you to the entire GMRG community for their ongoing feedback. Okay, so this is our agenda for today. I will leave our agenda here for a few minutes and would like to take this opportunity to introduce our moderator today. And it's a pleasure to introduce Anand Bhatia. He is a fellow member of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India and a partner of Bhatia Associates. Anand has really extensive experience in corporate consulting, organizational restructuring, domestic and international mergers and acquisitions. And over the last 15 years, Anand has advised more than 200 M&A transactions, some representing really the largest in India in the last few years. So again, I would like to welcome Anand and hand over to Anand. Anand, welcome.
Thank you, Professor Robert. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon in different parts of the globe that the panelists and the attendees would be today. Let me start with introducing the esteemed panel that we have today of industry experts. And the first one joining us on the panel today is Mr. Sanjeev Agarwal. Mr. Sanjeev is Director of Supply Chain South Asia at Hafele India Private Limited. Prior to this organization, Sanjeev was with American Tower, Ericsson, Schlumberger, and Agilent Technologies. Sanjeev has over 20 years of experience in global supply chain, procurement, building and transforming supply chains in the US, UK, China, and India. His area of expertise includes operation strategy and solutions, product development, contract negotiation, customer outbound delivery, warehouse management, after sales, service, and support. Thank you, Mr. Sanjeev, for your time on this panel today. We also have Mr. Hemant Tambade, the second esteemed guest on the panel today. Mr. Hemant is plant head with the piston division of Anand iPower Limited and has extensive multifunctional and cross-country experience, developed breakthrough manufacturing solutions leading to new levels of quality and cost competitiveness. He is called upon for his expertise in operations excellence and lean manufacturing to coach and mentor lean manufacturing initiatives. He is also a visiting faculty for top B schools in India on topics of technology management, operations, and supply chain management. Thank you, Mr. Hemant, for your time today on this panel. The third guest that we have today is Mr. Sunit Mukherjee. Mr. Sunit is again a supply chain specialist with over 20 years of experience. At Mondelez, he is the plant and transformation lead and has accomplished large-scale supply transformations by optimizing end-to-end supply chain by working in highly ambitious and volatile business environment. He has a cross-country experience across regions of Malaysia, Singapore, and Vietnam. His experience ranges in areas such as designing supply chain strategy, factory operations, logistics, customer service, to name a few. Thank you, Mr. Sunit, for joining us today. The next guest we have today is Mr. Ramesh Kumar, a seasoned business journalist with over 38 years of experience and an author of 3 books on supply chain and logistics. He runs a trust to uplift the living standards of long-haul drivers and their families. He is a consultant to large corporates and also a member of Chartered Institute of Logistics and Transport, India, and a member of National Committee on supply chain and logistics. He is also editor of Logistics Express and Driver Dunia. Thank you, Mr. Ramesh, for agreeing to be on this panel and sharing your thoughts. Last but not the least, we have Mr. Kishore Sekhwani, who is Vice President with Khaitan Chemical and Fertilizers Indore from the central part of India. And he has prior experience of working with one of India's largest company, Grasim Industries Limited, and over 3 decades of experience across chemical, fertilizers, and steel industry. His area of expertise also includes production, operations, quality and safety, process engineering, maintenance, and people management. I'm sure all of us would appreciate the diverse and the depth of the panel that we have today. And we are going to discuss the supply chain concerns or the supply chain issues, as Professor Robert highlighted, especially in relation to the coronavirus pandemic that we are all going through. India, as a heterogeneous society, has a slightly diverse set of challenges, what may have been seen internationally, owing to the size, owing to the complexities in terms of the federal and the state structure, and also the sheer 1.35 billion manpower that makes it much more complex in the Indian context. To set the context, the first COVID-19 lockdown in India was announced on March 22nd. It was perhaps unprecedented in the history of the world that 1.35 billion people were told to stay in their homes and not go out. From March till now in July, we have seen a gradual opening up of certain functions, certain essential services, and this has been very specific now to an individual containment zone or individual cluster. For example, where I am currently based in Mumbai, the offices are operating at only a 10% attendance. So if we have a 200-member strength, only 20 of us can attend office and 180 of us have to work from home. So there is a gradual opening that is happening, but as we speak, the numbers are increasing by the day, both in terms of affected and in terms of casualties. Given this background, the best way to understand the concern is also to hear from the experts in terms of their practical experiences in going through these last 3 months, and then crystal ball glazing and forecasting in terms of what the future holds for supply chain challenges. Mr. Ramesh, if I can start with the first question to you. I think a very diverse situation in India happened when there was this labor migration, because most of the labor in the Indian supply chain and manufacturing operations would come from certain states. And once the lockdown was announced, people started moving from cities into the hinterland. That migration is now meaning that in cities or in some of the manufacturing zones, we don't have enough people power, for people have gone back to their villages. How was the March month in your experience? Do you think this is a trend that will reverse soon, or we are for a much more systemic change as far as the migration of labor force goes? What are your thoughts on that? Mr. Ramesh Kumar, you'll have to unmute yourself.
Good morning, good day to everybody. Can you hear me?
Perfect.
Yeah.
Please go.
Yeah, please go.
Yeah.
Yes, Mr.
So for Greater Noida, which is close to national capital, and when the lockdown was announced, there was absolute panic for a simple reason. Either the industrial towns or the metros where the huge migrant labor was working, were left with no other option but to go back to their native places. And unfortunately there was no train, no bus, no transportation, no mode of transportation was available. So people coming, people coming from Bihar, Uttar Pradesh, Odisha, Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, they're all, nothing less than 1,000 kilometers away. Minimum is 1,000 kilometers. So Uttar Pradesh, so all this, there were no other option but to foot it out, walk all the way, carrying whatever luggage they had, or, the children, the family, okay, they have to walk back. So it was a major human disaster. Actually the government did not really think about, gave any thought to how to handle, this kind of a migration. It has never happened. It's the first time even with the government, it was the very first time. Because if at all something has happened, it happened at the time of, partition. Okay, but that has only been, a few states. Here, the entire country has come under that lockdown. And considering the fact in most of the industrial zones, okay, all the workforce was from this, people from the remote villages. These people came to the towns and industrial cities because, in the back home, the only was agriculture. So that forced them to really migrate to cities, in search of livelihood. Okay, when this lockdown happened, they simply have, in the absence of, like I said, no mode of transportation, they really walked, and many times on an empty stomach. It took a lot of time, more than a week or 10 days time before the government started realizing the severity of the problem, started organizing something or other, beginning with a few buses to carry them all the way to the districts at home. And it took some more time before, specialized trains can be organized to selected, selected towns where from these people came. So these millions really had a tough time. Okay, so yes, March, April. In fact, it is the spillover was visible even in the month of May. Okay, so the trains are all running. 200, 250 trains. The Indian Railways having shut down. Daily there are around 13,000 trains. But during this lockdown, after a couple of weeks' time, they started running hardly 200, 250 trains, basically to ferry a migrant labor, distressed labor who want to really go back home. The reason these people really want to go back home was twofold. One, in the absence of no earning, the living has become very difficult. How will you, lead your daily life? That's one thing. The second thing was the fear of corona, the fear of death, the fear of infection. They felt, if they can really make it home, at least, the family will be there. They'll be in the midst of their own family. Something or other, they can take care of it. And, the infection.
Sure.
Virus would not affect them. That's what they felt. So, after in May, things started settling down. Migrant labor, corona has gone home and settled down. Okay. Sure. Answering to a second question. Okay, the question is, will they come back? How long they plan to stay? That's a very, very interesting question for a simple reason. Look, all said and done, whatever migration has happened, one has to bear in mind it's going to be temporary. One may ask why it's temporary, why it is not going to be permanent. For a simple reason, the very fact these guys left their home, like in the rural India, because in search of employment, earning. And in the villages or hometown, in the homes, there was nothing excepting agriculture, which is seasonal. So they have to take out a living. So the only place where they can make a regular income or source of income was in the cities and industrial towns, where they came, worked as skilled labor, unskilled labor, all kinds of things. Okay. The question is, we have to bear in mind. See, it is only a temporary measure. I say they've gone back. And definitely, they're all, given the, television penetration, okay, they are absolutely clued into what is happening across the country. And, they are not in the dark. They know everything happening. This is the age of, carpet bombing kind of a thing. There are a number of channels giving you, giving you information on a very regular basis. Okay, so they are clued into it. Even otherwise, Doordarshan, the government-owned television, has a wider reach. So they are clued into it. Plus, the radio is there. So they are not in the dark. So they are watching. And in fact, they actually, when they really moved back, they did a wise decision Because if you really notice, like even in the month of July, still, like even though the, infected numbers are coming down, okay, all those kind of a thing, still, like it's a very severe problem in the metros and industrial towns. In fact, a couple of industrial towns like, Aurangabad, Pune, Sinchwad, it's all automotive hubs.
Yeah.
Huge industrial centers. They found, they have a problem. Okay. So they have a problem. In fact, a couple of plants were asked to shut down. Okay.
Sure.
So in the light of this fact, they did the right thing of going back. So I say that they'll definitely come back for a simple reason. Having lived in, cities and industrial towns, they got used to a different kind of a lifestyle. Definitely a much better lifestyle than what they were, living in that town. So my guesstimate is that definitely they will come back. Okay, it's a question of when. It's not, will they? It's a question of when. One final point. In fact, this morning, Indian Railways, there was a news item about Indian Railways. Okay, so actually the reverse migration has started happening to the Western India and, Northern India. The trains were carrying people from these, remote, villages or towns to industrial area. So, it started, but, having said, social, distancing, as well as, limitations in how much manpower they can do. So it is really, it's going to take some more time before, anything happens. Yeah.
Perfect. Perfect. I think very helpful insights, Rameshji. What it appears is that this looks to be a temporary rush to safety rather than any kind of systemic or cyclical change in the way the labor workforce and the migration would continue. Mr. Sunit Mukherjee, are you able to hear us? Okay, I think there's some technical challenge at Mr. Sunit Mukherjee's end, and by the time we resolve, I will go to my next set of questions to Mr. Hemant. Mr. Hemant, as Mr. Ramesh also briefed that the labor force is now has a rush to safety into their villages. In such situation, how does one go about the supply chain design in the current phase and also post-COVID? Because if you are dealing with uncertainty in terms of labor and also intermittent lockdown announcements, you never know when a particular state might call a lockdown, just like Bangalore announced a lockdown last week. Tomorrow it could be Delhi that could announce a lockdown. And when you have so many different state governments calling for intermittent lockdowns, how do you ensure robustness of your design of your supply chain?
Thanks, Anand. And good morning and good afternoon to all who are participating in this webinar. So my quick background, I come from automobile industry and especially the auto component industry. So the entire industry is arranged in the form of tier OEMs, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, etc. So what we have what we are experiencing right now is the migrant labor problem is mainly hitting the auxiliary units, number one, and number two, the operations which are outsourced to contractors. So in a way, these were not very strategic operations as far as auto industry goes. So labor re-recruitment and retraining is a key issue right now. And I think the auxiliary units and the contractors are doing it quite properly because in their own organizations, they have people who have not gone back. Okay, they are still there in the plants, in their units, and they are able to train the newcomers. So if people are available, retraining is happening. Only two risks which we see right now, which will continue to be there for somewhat longer time till the situation stabilizes and you have stable workforce in place. Number one, when we are retraining, it is no guarantee that they will acquire the skills in short span of time, and it can lead to very costly quality issues because the entire auto industry works on very lean supply chains. There is not much of an inventory, and hence any mistake that happens, it cascades down immediately in the entire supply chain. So costly mistakes could be one issue, number one. Number two is the way we have a risk of the entire plant getting shut down. for example, I have one dedicated auxiliary unit, means I'm depending on only one supplier. And if due to Corona, if his entire unit has been asked to shut down by the local authorities, then I run into a bigger risk because I don't have alternate supplier or alternate source for that component. So these are the two issues. One is the disruption in supplies, and second one is the potential of quality issues. So of course, we'll have to take measures for them, but eventually that will happen. There is no immediate solution for this.
Yes, absolutely. I think if I can, maybe put it differently, what it appears is that the earlier sort of highest focus in a supply chain design would be on cost efficiencies or inventory management and reducing the levels. But maybe this focus has now shifted to ensuring buffers, backups, bench strength, and making sure that we have a little bit of flap there so that we are not dependent on maybe something that can tomorrow fall prey to a labor issue or to a lockdown issue. Yes, I think that's perfectly.
Just to add to the point of any supply chain redundancy or buffers. So right now, the industry is operating at hardly 40% of the capacity. So when it comes to any reactive capacity or ramping up, that opportunity is available. And many of the fellow industries are doing that. So that is there. So in one way, it has come as a blessing in disguise that there are capacities available for ramping up. Thank you.
Yes, perfect. Mr. Kishore, let me go to your thoughts on. In India, typically we have a large set of small and medium enterprises. As per a 2018 survey, there are about 6.3 crore or 63
millions micro small industries in India.
Correct.
Big one, big figure.
Big one. And also, you are vice president with this company, Khaitan Chemicals as well. What is your sort of thought process that whether some of these large designed and multinational companies were better placed to handle this kind of a last 3 months that we have seen, or you think that nimble-footed, relation-oriented, medium and small enterprises handled this last 3 months better?
Yeah. Hi everyone. Good day to everyone. So this is a very important part. You say this was a question. We as a Khaitan industry also part in this medium small scale industry. It's a micro small or medium scale industry. For us, like stopping a plant in the month of March, where we were expecting the Rabi season was closing and Kharif was just to start, and the demand was so picking up. Say this was like a falling of lightning on your industry. Suddenly there's a lockdown and you don't have to run the factory. Then this was a challenge. But because somehow as a government realizes the farming is a very important part in their strategy and they should not neglect this part, so they issued us some guidelines. Maybe some orders were issued and some amendment were issued. By the 10th of April, we could start say we have 6 units placed in India in different parts. Maybe strategically we place this industry in such a way that we can supply fertilizers from nearby states to their demands. One unit is Rajasthan, which takes care from Rajasthan, Punjab, Haryana. One is in Dahej, which takes care of Maharashtra and Gujarat part, maybe some part Madhya Pradesh. Two in the UP, which is basically heartland, and one is in Madhya Pradesh, again the heartland, where a lot of farming is being done. So government could give us some, says you can start industry with some precautions or guidelines that you to follow. So central government guidelines were then taken to the state government, local administration. They started giving us a facility. You can start that. Then challenges were like bringing the person to the factory. They were afraid. They were requested. Maybe they were given some incentive also. Okay, if you can join, we can give extra, maybe overtime, maybe 30% extra bonus can be given. That's also given. All measures taken. Still there was a supply chain management. Say raw material. One is say we require rock phosphate, sulfur, maybe other chemicals also. And then the inventory of say this medium small industry doesn't have much inventory with them. They don't keep say supply chain management is there, but for them supply chain management is very small link, not big link. They go for local purchases. Now suddenly all local purchases were stopped. But still, say we have advantage if we can go personal, say personal links in this time, personal contacts help us to get the material in the some maybe in delay, but we got it. So our industry could start functioning from 10th April, and we can gradually increase the production because this was Kharif season, demand was so rising up. So we could manage this part. So say to answer this medium scale industry like us, have a little bit advantage in this part. Khaitan was having a little bit advantage in this part.
Sure. So I think, yes, necessity is the mother of adoption or invention, as one may say. And, given the situations that most of the companies would have faced 3 months before, I'm sure relationships and, personal connects may have helped the medium and the small enterprises to go through this tide. Sanjeevji, you come from an organization that is a multinational organization spanning from Europe, India, the Americas as well. And we have seen the challenges that one has gone through over the last 3 months. But now when slowly businesses are restarting or would have restarted over the last 1 month, what has been your key learnings that you have seen when you went ahead with restarting your business, let's say after a brief period of lockdown?
Okay. So, good afternoon and good morning and good day to everyone to the respective geography they are based. So it's a good point, like as we talked about, as Ramesh and Kishore mentioned and Hemant, we gone for a shutdown and for a sudden shutdown, but to restart the engine is not so easy. The number one point, like we based, I brief about my operation first. We highly based on import. We do very little sourcing from India, hardly 10%. Primarily, we source from Asia and Europe. So more than 90% dependency on import based. So once we start opening up after the lockdown, I think first and the foremost point, there's no coordination between the state and the central. Maybe phase 1 and phase 2 is till that time is a complete lockdown. So there's no activity. Once it start opening up, there is no way where you can see a clear location of the portal or the information where you have a complete information. During that time, going from office like to DM office where you need to take a permission and all this thing, and in a COVID environment where no one is willing to go out is a big challenge. So that's the point number one from the administrative side where the government regulation clarities, no one have intent to violate, but in terms of clarity or who is the right authority to give a permission or not to give a permission, who fall in essential. So that's the number one challenge we faced. But foremost, I think the resources, because as we have a warehouses or the different movement happening, because everyone is too much scared about moving out. So first you need a very clear-cut strategy for the resources. Because being a German company, and then we need to report to the corporate office also if something going which is not as per the law or anyone is impacted COVID, we need to report. And especially when we do such an operation, we have a 3PL involvement, a lot of movement on the road. So first, how to bring the resources to the warehouses or to the offices to do the needful, and not just bringing and creating a confidence into them, because everyone is a bit scared about the permission we receive like to operate with a 20% in the warehouse to start, because some of our activity comes under the essential services also. So take a permission, put up a sanitization tunnel, different safety norms, mask, gloves, sanitizer, changing a lot of location, sanitizing daily night the warehouses. So a lot of these things first to put in a place, ensuring of all of them. I think that's a number one thing, because as is mentioned, is everyone is doing this first time, so no one have any like SOP defined, so you're learning and doing all these things also into that. So that's a number one point. After that, all the airports movement, all the cargo movement is stuck. So eventually you need to live with whatever you holding in your warehouses. So at that particular time, whomsoever is holding inventory is a king in the marketplace, because procuring any of these deliveries is almost impossible. All my custom clearances started only after a gap of 40-45 days. And top of that, the cost, but you can't do a business as a normal, because we have a more than 20,000 SKU what we give it to the market. So if, and is a more is a solution is not a standalone into that. So something is a short, customer is not willing to put up a money. And during the time, customer is also very, very choosy, because the person who is working is really the person who is in a need. So if something is not there, meeting a customer expectation, delivering on time is a key challenge, because transporter is not able to deliver. Even they pick up a cargo from your side, but on the road, again, the police and the administration, everyone have their own version. Some allow, some don't allow. So there's a lot of, I will say, about a chaos or unclarity. Clarity may be to the across all the section, across all the service provider, either being administration side or maybe the policing side. So the smooth flow can happen, either you allow or you don't allow. So these are the basic challenges we face in initial first week, apart from demand or other aspect.
Sure. Sanjeev, allow me to continue this thought with you. You said that if you are stuck with inventory, then you are the boss. It may also work the other way, that you are sometimes the last man standing, and then there is a lockdown that happens. Especially we have seen that with perishable goods, or goods that have a limited shelf life, and it works both ways in that sense. But I think the next question that comes is, there are certain products that would have a pent-up demand, and you may have an expectation that once lockdown opens, people will come on the roads and you'll have a pent-up demand for some products. At the same time, you may have a certain basket of products that may be subject to a continued slowdown, given the habit changes or given the lockdown that people may continue to be suffering. In such a situation, how does one go about forecasting demand? Because supply chain is so integrated with demand forecasting that one can't have, you can't delink one from the other. So what sort of challenges you are now facing in demand forecasting, and how do you deal with the uncertainties that come in such a situation?
Yeah, that's a real challenge. Once you start operating, not for almost all the business, leaving some of a food or FMCG type of a business. That's a key challenge, because demand forecasting typically have a long-term to medium-term or historical sales pattern. And a lot of company nowadays is moving to the electronic forecasting tool or the method. So how we do that when you have almost 2.5 months is almost a zero demand into that. So the first and the foremost thing, I think, as a supply chain, we start focusing on a short term, what you can see on immediate horizon, what you need to do. You need to segregate, or you need to split out the short term planning to the long term planning. So first you need to secure what is the short term, what you needed for your businesses. And top of that, one more aspect, like we have a Pan India and we have 4 warehouses. You're not sure which location will be open and which location will be closed, like Bombay. Till maybe 2 weeks before, we're not sure we'll be able to operate from Bombay, or we need to move a lot of goods to the Delhi or to the Bangalore. So you need to decide or the design your inventories in a manner, if 1 or 2 warehouse goes out of operation, you can still meet your immediate requirement into that. So again, the historical demand pattern for the regional demand also may not true a lot of cases also. So we try to split the demand based on the seasonality of a product or the regional requirement of the product. So that's something we need to adjust overnight, and whenever we allow to move the goods, we start moving into that. So that's something as an immediate fix, we try to do that. But long-term aspect, we need to calculate more on a historical demand pattern, considering the demand prior to the COVID period time. Because COVID period, the demand pattern is eventually is no relevant because it's happened all of a sudden. And business you considering is a normal, so you need to planning for that. But the major change in this period is like moving the cargo, the lead time from the supplier side, that's keep on changing. Either you buying from China, you buying from Italy, you buying from Europe, any other country, almost a lot of places that are locked down and it's not happening same point of time. Like Italy was locked down, but they're allowed to move the cargo. But German is not working at that time. So coordinating between Europe, how your cargo can move close to the ship. These are the key challenges you need to plan into that. On top of that, when cargo reaches to the Indian Ocean, the custom clearance and all this thing. So these are the things you need to consider very minutely and need to design about that, how you can do and moving your goods based on your regional demand. I think these are the key challenges you need to review almost on daily basis and keep on fine tuning it into that.
Yeah, so I think what I'm hearing you, Mr. Sanjeev, is that you would place a certain amount of emphasis on the historical demand pattern, but you would filter it given the current reality of the lockdown, and then try and see that the supply chain doesn't have so much of inflexibilities in terms of your commitment to your suppliers or to your logistics partner, and build buffers so that you can have elbow room to play in that demand uncertainty situation. Interesting.
True, because this all happened all of a sudden, and prior to that, there's a major reason like China was shut down because of Chinese New Year.
Yeah.
And this happened immediately after Chinese New Year. So there's no shipment moving from China a month before that also. So that's further compounded the whole issue.
Right. Just a gentle reminder to the attendees, in case there are any questions for the panel, please feel free to put them in the chat box or in the Q&A. And after we finish a couple of other questions with the panelists, we will take up those questions by the attendees as well. Do we have the benefit of Mr. Sumit Mukherjee now on the call?
Unfortunately, no, because there is some technical issue and he won't be able to join us.
No worries. Let me take this opportunity, Mr. Hemant, to maybe take a sense from you in terms of how has the tried and tested concept, let's say for so many decades we have been hearing about concepts of just in time, or the inventory just being there on the floor when it is required. Now those time tested concept of JIT may no longer be relevant or workable in the current situation that we are now. So given that situation, is your visibility into not only your tier 1 suppliers, but you would also want visibility into your tier 2 and tier 3 suppliers? Or what are you doing differently to make sure that you amend your just-in-time policies or the other traditional linear model of supply chain that you would have historically worked on?
Okay. Very interesting question, because this question was also raised few years ago when there was a tsunami in Japan and earthquake, and many Japanese supply chains collapsed, and we in automobile industry also felt that impact of that. But the point is, the whole idea of just in time, the way we practice in auto industry, is basically for improving quality. Because if you spread your inventories thin, the problems come to surface early and we can go back to the root cause of the problem and fix it. This is the very basic logic or approach behind implementing just in time in automobile industry, number one. Number two, it also provides opportunities for continuous improvements. So these are still the valid points. So to the extent possible, I think auto industry will continue to work on pull principle, will continue to send schedules which are very short-term schedules and which are to be fulfilled in a short span of time. However, one thing I am finding that especially for long lead time items and the items which are imported, people will start building strategic stocks, and that is happening. However, it needs to be seen that how this strategic stock will really work out, because there could be issues, as Mr. Anand pointed out, perishability or the product going out of demand in coming future. So that kind of a risk would be there. But I think a pull principle and just-in-time will continue with specific strategic inventories in place. But that every specific company or their supply chain will figure out, and they will do that. That's what I think.
Yeah. So it's a hybrid evolving approach that will help us sail through, which is built upon the time-tested concepts of just-in-time, which is so well ingrained into the way we do things. Kishorji, let me ask you a similar question, what Sanjeevji also shared his thoughts on. In terms of how does one go about with the pent-up demand that is waiting to be served once the ease down happens? How do you go about with estimating, especially the timing of that particular demand?
Yeah, that's true. But say I can go through my personal example, my factory, which we were seeing the demand coming up. Maybe our production has to be raised to that level, and for that, what we should do. So one of the thought management come up with like put some incentive schemes. Maybe we say the demand is coming. That was sure. The demand is now this like there is suddenly drought of material in the market, and suppose somebody produces more, they will capture market also. It's like at this time, it's like suddenly so industry will open up, and then there will be some demand of all material. So somebody has to do. So we put in two schemes. One was that already I told you we started with some incentive scheme of say salary was raised or some bonus was given. Now this new incentive scheme we launch our factory for 4 months, for July, August, September, October, which is we say this time where industry will open up and we need much more products. Maybe products are needed. So another incentive scheme was launched, which was say paying a extra bonus, extra money to them. In the past, the motivational was like money is more motivational part for our laborers or maybe staff members. So this scheme was again launched, and we hope the unit heads and the people working there will raise to their level and fulfill the products. So we are seeing the new innovative schemes coming with our company. Production has to be raised to level. For this, again, the question is how supply chain management will support. Now, I can see the government also feeling same. Railways never allowed us to have a mini rack. The system like they say you have 2,700 tons of metric ton of fertilizer has to be shipment minimum. Now they are also coming up with the new innovative small racks, maybe 1,300, maybe 1,100, maybe 1,200. Even trucks are being given transportation through maybe. Say we also depend on the rock phosphate which is coming from the Gulf countries, most of Morocco, Egypt, maybe Jordan rock. So again, this supply we are getting it. Somehow, government has given us facility to bring this material from the offshores, coming from others. So let's hope he thinks we can match the demand. So like we have to go through new windows have to open to us.
Sure.
Yeah.
Mr. Ramesh, let me quickly go back to you. You are a logistics man, and dealing on the ground in terms of the logistics and the labor force with your various initiatives. And logistics play a very integral part in supply chain management. Do you think there is efficiency loss on account of implementation of some of these social distancing and other health-related norms? And how does one kind of, is it possible to quantify to what extent has there been efficiency losses given the various government diktats and health distancing initiatives that one needs to go about in the logistics side?
See, see the social distancing is it is not a very industry friendly measure, or it is not economically friendly measure. It's like it's a health scare. You simply cannot afford people to work closer together. I'm talking about a shop full of labor. Okay, so moreover, in Indian India scenario factory setup, given the kind of Indian productivity, okay, so actually in India we need more people to do the same job compared to other parts of the world. So actually, this pandemic, whatever the crisis that has come, it has really made all the companies, all the boys, to really take a look at, how can we do, with less people? Okay. Yes. So today they are learning, I'm not talking about the white collar, I'm talking about blue collar or hockey collar or whatever it is. They are realizing that the multitasking is possible. Okay, so yes, but but we are not used to those kind of stuff. Unless you work in an MNC kind of a setup where multitasking is taken for granted, it's there. But in other Indian companies, multitasking it's not considered as anti-labor and all those kind of a thing. So even now, see this, the social distancing, all those kind of a thing, definitely, the companies are, all the factories are coming to terms with it. That is one thing. The second thing which I would like to point is, they're talking about the just in time and all those kind of things. See, forget about the current coronavirus, current crisis. See, the last 10 years, there are so many, this kind of crisis has happened. Pandemic kind of a thing, whether it is, tsunami, or your violent flood, or your Iceland, volcanic ash. All these things happen. And just point about Indian supply chain, honchos. Across the globe, all the supply chain honchos are all wanted. They simply have no clue. Okay, first of all, always you can say it's a black swan or whatever it is, how can you? It's unpredictable, nobody knew. The second thing is, today, most of the companies, all the big boys have, something called a chief risk officer. They usually do all those, worst case scenario, best case scenario. But none of them really factored this, pandemic kind of a thing, because, nobody gave a thought. Nobody went back to 100 years ago when the Spanish flu happened. Nobody gave a thought to it. So, which basically brings us, I always wonder, what is the maturity of Indian supply chain officers, Indian supply chain, all the big boys. Okay, but all the time, supply chain, it's very critical. There's no doubt about it. I'm not saying that they don't do anything. Yes, they're doing something, but they're really not. The maturity level has really not improved. Even I'll give you a very concrete example. Everybody says just in time, and we want to have zero inventory. I have seen across India, outside the plant, you will find, trucks loaded with, I'm basically specifically talking about automotive segment, which is a huge, user of, this 3-wheeler kind of a thing. I have seen plenty of automobile companies outside factory gates, materials gate. You will find trucks loaded with things. Actually, instead of keeping the, unloading and keeping the stock inside the plant, it's all become like a, warehouse on wheels. So there is no efficiency, there is no production planning. It's all very easy to talk all the buzzwords. But I always suspect and wonder, what is the maturity of Indian supply chain? So if they cannot manage a proper, very simple thing, ordinary time, like a warehousing, how can you expect them to really handle a pandemic?
Sure, understood. I think that's some interesting insights into how the Indian situation also plays out during the pandemic. I think we can take a few questions, and we have received quite a few questions from the attendees. The first question, and I think Hemantji, you would be best placed to answer this, is that has the top management become more sensitive to supply chain concerns because of COVID? Will the role of a supply chain manager see a permanent change post this pandemic? Clearly, the supply chain manager, who would be one of the functions within the entire chain, is now a hero coming out with a lot of dependencies on him. So how has that attention been, and do you see this continuing?
Yeah, this is a very interesting question. At least one thing I can share here is that now top management is looking into the operational part very often, and they are having much more understanding about the pain points of the supply chain. And that is a good thing, because over the time, what I have seen is supply chains have become more, IT oriented or software oriented. It was kind of, that you implement a particular software, you start using a particular application, and your all problems will go away. And then everything was expected to happen through software. But now, due to Corona or COVID, people are getting more hands-on experience of what happens or what is happening. And as the situation will progressively evolve, we went into the lockdown very suddenly, but we are coming out of it very slowly. So it is allowing people to think and discuss, decide what to do next. So yes, the supply chain management role will continue to evolve, and it has been evolving. Only COVID has given it a new direction. And as far as top management goes, definitely, especially from a working capital management point of view, especially the way material management and cash management has become so critical in today's condition, they are paying attention. And their attention is not going to go waste. It is going to make the supply chain as a concept and supply chain managers as a profession much more meaningful, much more contributive to the success of the business. As the situation is evolving, everybody is getting time to think, decide, and act upon. So this is definitely going to transform the whole supply chain concept and the profession as well. Thank you.
Interesting. The second question also, Mr. Hemant, I would like to stick with you. The demand in sectors like automobiles seems to have collapsed to an extent. The ancillary and smaller third tier suppliers might face a bigger survival challenge. So are larger auto companies helping these smaller suppliers to tide this uncertainty, or there is enough and more backup available that you just don't care?
So a very interesting question. Again, the auto industry, when it especially comes to auto components, there are two type of demands we experience, or rather I would say three type of demands. Take example of my own company. We are present in export market. We are also supplying to the original equipment manufacturers, and we are also having our own aftermarket where we sell our products under our own brand name. So let us say 50% of our demand comes from original equipment, but balance 50% is coming from exports and our own aftermarket. So these three markets have their own challenges. So coming to the question of how OEs will support. So yes, OEs are very supportive for the very reason because a single supplier going out of stopping their operations due to COVID, they can bring their entire assembly line to halt. So they are very considerate and they are listening. Earlier they were not listening, now they are listening, and they are empathetic. They are trying to understand and also to solve the problems. Coming to the export market, so far we have found that the export market demands are still continue to be the way they were, because they typically provide almost 3 to 6 months of lead time. So we'll come to know the effect of COVID in export market in another 2 to 3 months. As far as aftermarket is concerned, we are having very interesting situation. Typically, when they open an engine for repair, they don't need parts only from a single supplier. They will need parts from multiple suppliers to go into that engine. And that unseen dependency when it comes to engine repair and the demand coming from that, that is becoming a very interesting situation. Because I may have volume forecast going by the trend and what the aftermarket sales team is telling me, but the actual demand will happen provided all other components are also available. So I think there is an interesting opportunity emerging. Can there be an industry-wide platform, or can there be an industry-wide information sharing network which will tell everyone about the simultaneous availability of various components which are required together? In fact, this could be an opportunity for e-commerce to come in big way with their data analytics capabilities and the way they handle data and everything in the auto industry, especially in the aftermarket, because there is a huge opportunity here where there could be a single party, let's say Amazon of auto industry, who sense the demand, who orchestrate the demand, and then make the win-win for everyone. So we'll have to see how it evolves.
Sure. Mr. Kishore, there's a question for you.
Yeah.
Can you please elaborate on the unique advantages that micro, small, and medium enterprises have over the larger companies in handling and recovering from this crisis? What are the USPs that worked in your favor?
That's true. That's one of the important question again raised by somebody. So a small organization like us, or medium organization like us, have a limited workforce. One of the four and divided in 3 shifts, say 2 shifts. So USA in COVID-19 condition, we were giving advantage. At least at the that time, plant was working with 30 people or 40 people at the time in a shift, where social distancing still can be followed and plant can be done. So that's the one advantage of a small industry. maybe we have the supply chain management, but still, say we in a small industry or medium scale industry follow this personal contact with the purchaser or maybe the vendors. So this vendor personal contacts help us in the say. I must say we were caught in a situation where we require some spare parts, so we could open the godowns in the night time with the say this was facility given by the vendors. In the daytime they cannot do, but in night time they manage us to give the spares. They were supplied. So this is like we get an advantage for this small industry because it gives an advantage by giving small spares, small parts required for the industry to run. So and this is again the less overheads. One of the important part of small industries has the less overheads. The systems are not. They say we don't follow very complicated system like a SAP or maybe other system to procurement. Say small industries have this kind of system. They have their own workable system on the system to follow. I still say a small workforce, we get advantage, we can pay them extra money and we can boost up their morale by coming to industry and perform their duties. So this is giving to small industry has less advantages.
Interesting. Mr. Sanjeev, a question for you. You mentioned that there were supply uncertainties due to which the lead time increased. Can you quantify for us what would have been, in your view, the lead time? Did it double? Did it triple? And how much the variable or unpredictability in that lead time was inbuilt? Sanjeev, you are on mute.
Sorry. Yeah, so as Hemant mentioned about the whole focus is changing. Here, like supply chain, slowly consider as a software, you just put up and then someone see the machine and pull out. And the whole importance of a value chain in the organization and importance of a supply chain is changed post-COVID. And top of that, as you mentioned about the lead time, because lead time, I slightly go on a bigger scope. The designing of a supply chain become a very important now. In case you dependent of anyone outside your factory or four wall of your company, we need to see whole end-to-end gamut into the different perspective. You need to redesign everything. As mentioned, like, are you a single source dependent? You have a multi-source dependent. What are you sourcing? Where your supplier is sourcing? Because typically in auto, I've seen we go to the tier 1 supplier and we just talk about who is your tier 2 also. But across industry, this practice is not followed so much. After the COVID, I think this practice going to be increasing across different industry where supply chain professionals start focusing till the last mile of a supply chain from where what is coming and what can be the hindrance or can be risk at any given point of time. And COVID may be the example remembered for next 10, 20 years while someone is designing a supply chain for any medium, small or large organization. As lead time in isolation may not be, because a lot of time lead time when we talk about, we plan like the Toyota way, we split the whole demand into the different package, we move into that. But again, lead time become a very, very relevant because when you talk about cash to cash cycle for your product, even if you're buying, because overseas also you facing the challenge or the discussion regarding the payment term, because all the suppliers start looking for better payment term in the coming point of time. If you not just a manufacturer and you have a variety of product, then product shipping cost, ex-works cost, CIF, and that overall shipping different cost, seasonality is very, very high. During a COVID time, you see the demand or the freight rate is almost double calling from overseas. So I believe not only the lead time, the whole supply chain design become a key issue And in my opinion, almost all organizations need to go back to the drawing board, seeing the business risk from the different lens now, because till now we just considering everything whatever supply chain is doing. We also talk to the tier one supplier and we leave everything without having a count of all of these things. And all of this information, all the OEM or the last mile buyer will start correlating and analyzing all of this thing and periodically start reviewing, in my opinion, after the COVID.
Sorry, Sanjeev. I think possible to give some sense on the quantification of your increase in lead time, double, triple, or it's very difficult to get that sort of a specification on lead time?
Actually, at this time, disruption is almost everywhere because no other than China, no other country is back to the normal. China only right now you're getting discount if you place an order or if you place a higher order because they're sitting on a higher capacity. Europe is still not back to the normal, although Europe is now on summer vacation time, July and August.
Yeah.
But still they're not back to the normal situation. So lead time is almost 20 to 30% higher if I talk about average. But it's the most dangerous time because you cannot predict right now. A lot of time, because I've talked to a couple of European suppliers also, they don't see any demand. So maybe sometime you have a lead time of 15 days also for the product, which earlier maybe 45 days because they have no demand, they have a stock. So sometimes it becomes misleading to you if you change in your supply chain design aspect into that. So I really don't want to give you one answer because there's a lot of variable parameter on the demand. Versus to the lead time, because if you start planning with a shorter lead time of from which country the cargo is coming, like I give you example of Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka has stopped all the imports almost from last 1.5 months because they're only allowing very few commodity or very few HSN code to be allowed to be entered in the Sri Lanka, and almost there is a crisis for all the manufacturing in Sri Lanka in a current situation. So right now, I will say situation is not back to normal. Some places, sometimes you have a positive surprises, somewhere you have a negative surprise.
Perfect, perfect. Yes, I think the next question is to Mr. Ramesh. I believe, Mr. Ramesh, you mentioned that quality risks have increased. Have you seen major failures yet? Or what are companies doing to counteract any quality risk that one may face on account of the pandemic?
Quality risk of what? The workforce?
Yes, the risk of quality in a particular supply chain getting affected on account of the workforce or the issues in the logistics segment.
Bound to happen, bound to happen. Nothing can be done. Like, one of the panelists mentioned about
Mr. Ramesh, we are having some.
You may get,
Ramesh, can I suggest Ramesh, please stop your video and maybe you have a better voice quality.
Can you? Hello?
Yes, better.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, much better. Much better.
Yeah. So, like in a couple of the companies, due to this problem of less workforce to work on the shop floor level, they are trying out the local, people, like one of the panelists mentioned, in many of the industry, however, tier 1, tier 2, whatever it is, the skill required, even though we may call them the unskilled and all those kind of things are low skill, that still requires a certain amount of finesse. Okay, that's not there. So the quality will be a sufferance. So that's also one of the reasons, even like a big automobile companies also would like to go slow. Okay, they don't want to really ramp up the production because see, even though if you really take a look at the SIAM automobile sales figures, barring the tractor, two-wheelers, and accepting these two, the rest are all not doing that well. Okay. In fact, in the 3 days ago, like all the automobile manufacturers, they spoke. There is going to be a lot more importance on the, like the low end, 2-tonner, 3-tonner kind of a thing, because of the e-commerce companies. Like I mean, the online, like a purchase started happening more. So that movement of the essentials required those kind of a stuff. Okay, so it is happening. So like a quality is definitely going to be a sufferer. So that is the reason why the production is also going to take a lot more time before it ramps up.
Understood. Just a reminder, if any of the attendees have any questions, feel free to post on the Q&A or the chat tab, and we will take that up. We have one question for Mr. Hemant. You mentioned about there was available capacity. Can you elaborate on your available capacity comment? When did this occur? Why? And how to take advantage of it?
Yeah, sure. So when I said supply chain needs buffers or some kind of extra safety. So one of the point came up was that there could be extra capacity. So yes, right now there is extra capacity because the demand is low. For example, it is right now in India, the demand is at around 40%. So most of the plants are running maximum 2 shifts. So third shift capacity is available. So that capacity can be used. So for example, what we are doing in specific cases, that we may produce in 1 shift, okay, and then we use the second shift for kind of an inspection, because there are issues with labor. So we may be running some of the equipment with trainees or temporary workforce. So we use the additional time available or the capacity available for re-inspection purpose. So before we dispatch the material, we can inspect and send it out. So that is how the capacity could be used. Second one is, right now we are ready to take last minute orders. For example, if I was running the plant something like 60 to 70% on make to stock basis, now and balance was make to order. So my make to order proportion is going up because I have capacity. I can make valid commitments to my customers, and that is helping me to get extra orders. So that is how it is in a measurable way. It is going from more opportunities for make to order kind of a scenario from make to stock. So this is how the extra capacity is playing out. Thank you.
Sure, sure. I'll continue the next question with you, Mr. Hemant. The question is, in the world post COVID-19, how do you see the use of automation evolving in all facets of supply chain, especially down the chain, in warehousing, deliveries, cross docks, etc.? I think the question is more got to do with adoption of IoT or adoption of digital supply chain mapping, blockchain in supply chain, and how would some of these things evolve in the era post-COVID?
Yeah, very relevant question. This is when we talk about automation, let us for discussion purpose divide in 2 parts. One is the business process automation and another one is the manufacturing process automation. So business process automation would happen faster because it is more about you're deploying IT tools and getting things done, and that is also being complemented by work from home. So as people are now gaining confidence about working from a remote place and still delivering the business results, so that process automation would gain momentum. When it comes to manufacturing process automation, where we use pick and place robots or we use gantry systems, etc., that will take time. The reason is all the manufacturing equipment or the factory layout may not be suitable for that, and it calls for capital investment. Right now, I'm working on one proposal to automate one CNC machining center cell using robotics. But then I found that with the current costs and fixed cost as well as a variable cost, it still makes much more sense to deploy labor in specific cases, especially if I'm already de-skilled the job and I'm using low cost labor in that case. So that is another deterrent for going for manufacturing process automation. However, there is one more opportunity coming up. I'm finding a trend that supply chains are becoming more and more local. What I mean is that over the time, the customers have developed sources all around the world. and now they are finding challenges. So they are turning back to the local suppliers and asking them, can they provide this particular component? For example, a commodity like castings. There is enough casting capacity and expertise available in India, but due to various reasons, these castings were outsourced to countries like China. Now the inquiries are coming to these suppliers. So they are also gaining confidence and they may invest in more capacities. And when they go for this new capacity, they will use all the lessons learned and they will heavily go for automation. And they will try to use all IoT and Industry 4.0 concepts in their new plant. So in one way, with Indian market on their side, it can create a long-term competitive advantage for Indian suppliers, because if the demand is consolidated in India, which is enough to start a new plant or to modify or modernize a plant, that will give an advantage because they will be bringing only cutting edge and latest and relevant technology in their plants. So this could be a game changer.
Yeah, so I think what I'm hearing you, Mr. Hemant, is that the pace of adoption of automation will only accelerate with COVID and in the post-COVID era. And yes, there are certainly triggers to have that acceleration. Mr. Kishore, let me ask you the next question.
Yes.
It is said that adversity is the mother of invention. So has the COVID adversity resulted in any innovations in your company that you would like to share with us?
Technologically, not much innovation, but the human relation part, which was we say our industry or we feel human is the part where we can manage much better, the industry can run much better. So this kind of part, human management was done. We sit in the corporate office and the units are located in many different parts of India. And how can we manage them? Because movement was not difficult because already we used to travel to their factories and we can solve their problem by going there in their factory premises. But now, so some schemes like how the people can be motivated. Say this COVID also gives us a pressure. Is there, of course, the demand are less, but some industries are saying if you can produce more, you can control the market. So this is how you can produce the more. So this was can people be motivated by some other way? So keeping social distancing, there may be, say we place the doctors in each industry. So doctors were there. Say your health will be taken care. You will be sanitization will be there. You will be given all these gloves, goggles, and maybe face mask, everything should be given. Come to our industry. Maybe we provide the vehicles to transport you to either. We can provide an arrangement to stay in your factory. Please come. So I have seen so many examples. There was our industry. I had gone to Gujarat there a few days ago in my plant. So I was talking to some gentleman. He says, so big industry also keeping 500 people in their factory premises to run the units because they see this is opportunities. Challenges produce opportunities. So this is like a challenge. We got to produce some opportunity of bringing more. So till now, we are getting a success in the market. We are producing more and we are capturing market also.
Sure. Sanjeev, I think we have 2 more minutes and let me squeeze in the last question for you. I think this one is perhaps also relevant for all of us on the panel as well as the attendees. That what new skills the managers in operations in supply chain should upgrade themselves in order to remain relevant in the new supply chain disruption. We are talking about uncertainties, we are talking about automation, we are talking about localization, and given all of that and the mixture that it kind of results post-COVID, do you see some skills that managers should adopt and acquaint themselves with?
That's a very good and very relevant point. I think we all talk about IoT and software or the different level of automation. But in my opinion, the most important thing is integrated manner. All this information need to be combined and integrated BI implementation across that. Because most of the time we talk about historical information is key and decision making. We need to change for all integrated flow, which give us, of course, historical with the predictive, considering the futuristic aspect also into that. You also touch base about blockchain and warehouse automation. All these things will also come. But again, the integrated platform where you can see the complete information and which help you for a decision support is a key for the future.
Interesting. Uh, I'm tempted to squeeze in one more, and maybe Mr. Hemant, this one can be best answered by you. This is a question from the founder of GMRG, and something that I also personally would like to know better. The question is, how can work at home experience be used to improve inter-supply chain coordination, that is cross-company employment?
Well, so let me tell you out of my own experience. When we used to conduct meetings in a normal way where people sit across the table, so there was a lot of cross communication and people used to jump in and try to drive the subject in different direction, etc. But with net meetings and with Zoom and Google Meet, it is not happening. People are waiting to somebody to complete what they want to say, and then only they are speaking. So
Yeah.
I think people listening power is going up, and that is one of the important point in communication. Are people listening to you? So that listening is going up, and have found it is also affecting one interesting measure that the number of open points at the end of the meeting are drastically coming down. Okay. Another point, people are also preparing a lot for attending the meetings when they are attending from home, because they know that they will not have all the resources with them. So people are getting prepared. So I think people are entering in the meetings in a prepared manner. Second one, they are ready to listen, and the overall noise level in the meetings is going down. So the meetings are becoming more productive. So in this way, I think working from home is definitely helping. And some companies may think of making it as a new normal, especially when the function is not something where you have to go in a manufacturing plant and be present there on a machine or in a warehouse, etc. So I think many office jobs would be definitely taken to work from home kind of a concept. Concept is not new. Many companies have already had flexi time and other things in place. It is more of paradigm shift. I'll just like to quote one example, if time permits. When ATMs were introduced, okay, it was the biggest change in the faith. Even today, when you take money, accept money from another person, you are supposed to count it. But I have not seen anybody counting the money which is coming out of an ATM, because it is a paradigm shift. It is a very new way of thinking. I think the same thing will happen with working from home. It will be a new normal. It will be a more productive kind of a thing, which we can see in the coming days. That's what I think. Thank you.
Impressive. I think this weaves in very well to the point of necessity, bringing in something that is a silver lining and actually supporting supply chain coordination. Professor Robert, I thoroughly enjoyed my time with these four insightful gentlemen and experts of the supply chain. And over to you for the next set of proceedings.
Great. Well, first and foremost, on behalf of GMRG, thank you to everyone. Thank you for participating. Thank you for your great insights, Anand. Thank you for managing this discussion. And I think it's extremely interesting to learn from your insight. I think we've learned a lot, right? And Sanjeev, I would like to quote you. You said restarting the engine is not easy after COVID-19, and I couldn't agree more, right? And I think you very clearly explained how complex it is to manage this crisis, and not only during the crisis, but also in the aftermath. Coordinating different markets, global markets, is difficult because every market is at a different stage. Then Kishore, you mentioned the other challenge, especially in India, but also around the world. The person who's working is also the one in need. And I think that's a great quote, just because it shows there are unique demands, because this is in the end a human crisis, right? A human crisis we need to find responses to. And that is sometimes very challenging, especially if PPE, protective equipment, is not readily available. And that brings me to the conclusion. I think some of the answers can be provided by supply chain managers, by supply chain researchers, and hopefully also by our GMRG members. And I think you very clearly said the role of supply chain management will increase. It will become more important very clearly. And the community is looking for new innovations related to workplace innovation, related to new supply chain design. I think it was very interesting how you mentioned the concept of localization, how localization can help Indian supply chains and global supply chain to be more agile in times of COVID-19. The role of automation, the role of hybrid management between lean and risk awareness, I think is a key concept that a lot of researchers already adapt in their research, but also, and you showed that practitioners live already. So I think that was very insightful, and I encourage all the participants to continue ask questions. If we don't have time now, most likely will not, but we will answer these questions through email, and we'll make sure every question will be answered. Now, again, thank you so much for your attention. Before we close, a couple of other things I would like to share with everyone. So give me here one second. So first, we would like to continue our GMRG webinar series. And of course, for that, we need your insight. I hope you see my screen here with a question. Is that correct? Can someone confirm quickly? Yeah, perfect. So that's a little Menti survey we like to do. And everyone, of course, our panelists, but also all the attendees out there, please go to menti.com and use the code 726402. And please share your ideas, what you think about the following question. What topics in manufacturing operations management would you like to discuss in future GMRG webinars? Of course, that can be related to COVID-19 or any other operations supply chain related topics. Of course, we would like to serve the community and not simply talk about the topics we want to hear. So please share your ideas, go online to menti.com and use the code 726402, and then you will be able to enter your answers and share your comments. So I will leave that up, and I will also show it at the end one more time. And then again, thank you very much for attending. Again, a big thank you to Anand as our moderator and to all the panelists for sharing their ideas. And we are looking forward to seeing you in our next GMRG webinar. Make sure you share your comments, ideas, feedback by sending us an email to gmrggroup@gmail.com. Follow us on LinkedIn. Of course, there you can also share your ideas and your comments, and there we will announce future GMRG events. So thank you again. I think everyone deserves a big round of virtual applause. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.